In this episode, you'll get a breakdown of the quote, "The standard you walk past is the standard you accept." Welcome to Energy Alignment for Entrepreneurs, the podcast helping entrepreneurs be free from anxiety, stress, and tension through balancing emotions and consciousness expansion. 3 things you'll discover today: how tolerance becomes complicit with your own diminishment, why setting boundaries feels like betrayal initially, and what to do when you realize you've been accepting the unacceptable. Let's start with the quote, "The standard you walk past, the standard you accept." And this is a favorite of mine in terms of what are the standards which you are building your entire life from. For example, one of my friends, we were on a hike recently, and he asked me what my belief system is. And I share with him that I don't have a belief system. And he was kind of pushing back to imply that that in itself is a belief system. The point that I was doing my best to make clear to him is that I have standards which are unusual. And these standards are the deepening of how you move through this life. Because you start to realize that some things you didn't think mattered actually matter so much more than you could have ever conceived. So then you get confronted with this epiphany of, okay, if I was living for so long unaware of that super important thing that it took me years of struggle, trial, etc., to see the value in, it's like, man, what else am I not seeing, right? Because if it took you years and years to come to a certain realization, for example, one could be the nature of life is that the world is not as it is, but as you are. What does that mean? Well, your belief systems, hence why I answered the question that he asked with a non answer. Because you can almost feel when someone is asking a question and they're almost maybe unconsciously trying to put you in a box, right? But the truth of life is that there are no boxes, but you have to break plenty of glass boxes to realize that there isn't anything that can bind you. And if you are to accept certain standards and not question them, you are to be within a specific glass box. Now, it could be a specific belief or an ideology. In other words, a dogmatic way of seeing the world. As you travel through your adventure, which is life, then you continuously have moments where your heart gets broken, or everything you thought to be true is proven wrong, right? And then you have to reflect on the illusion which you thought to be true, right? And that's kind of where we bring the standard into account. If we have expectations and routines and habits, there's nothing wrong nor right, but what we need to do is reflect and be aware of how do we feel in relationship to, first of all, why we do those habits, and then can we break the box? Is there a box? For example, I stopped meditating not because it was bad or good. I stopped meditating for years because I wanted to see if I could still bring the same peace into my daily life without the practice of meditation. Years go by and I see I can, but I can't. It's like a double edged sword. Whereas now I meditate not out of a form of a need, but just I can see that it improves my life in every area, and it's like a no brainer. But I had to bring that skepticism into my relationship to that habit to see what kind of game was I playing? Um, you can also see this in the fitness industry in many different avenues where people do what they do for impure motives. For example, someone could be a high performer in business, but they're getting that performance from a seeking of external approval. And you may be performing well in business from that motive, but you'll always do better in life when your motives are pure. So, for me, a standard that I have is awareness and clarity around why I do what I do. If I ever notice a thought that is impure in myself, I am not to shun myself, but I am to be terribly honest and to realize in the moment that that thought appears, I can observe it and then therefore let that layer of myself fall away. And when you combine awareness, observing of thought, feeling, being sensitive with a discernment, not a judgment of self, then that's where meditation and prayer comes into the whole game. Because part of the work is noticing. Part of the work is asking God, whatever label you may give God, for forgiveness, helping yourself to learn how to surrender to that which created you. And if you can move through life in that way and have standards in alignment with righteousness, then you will sow seeds of righteousness. And it is very straightforward in that essence. But the hard part I see to be is unraveling the illusion. There are many layers of conditioning or programming that we may not be conscious of until we get to a certain point in our adventure where you start to unravel and understand what is creating your mind's eye, what is creating the way that you see the world. And the problem with many healthy things is that it becomes a cult, right? Where if you have one religion, you say this religion is the only way, then you are blind because you are not considering that the truth comes in different colors and forms. And at the same time, this is where you have to be extremely connected to your own heart so that you are not to be deceived. Because what I say here is not to say that you cannot reach truth through one path. That it would be false. You can reach truth through going hard on one path. But the next level, see, the thing is, you never reach truth and you're done. There, it's ever expansive. So to think, to come to a conclusion that your way is the only way, that in itself is a satanic or antichrist, which many people of the Christian, they may not even be able to perceive that level of understanding in relationship to where they are in their spirit, their soul, their journey of consciousness. And the cool part about truth is that it wouldn't be your job nor my job to force it upon them. Whereas it doesn't mean that I have to accept what other people say, but it doesn't mean that I have to have any lack of peace due to where other people are at. You see, the path, the evolution, the change of consciousness is yours. It's yours individually. And as you live your life, then you're going to notice there are people with ears, people who hear with their heart, not just their ears, people who see with their third eye, with the spiritual lens of, wow, I have power over what I feel. I have power over what I create. And it is this sort of style of walking that allows for expansion to never end. So let's look at how tolerance becomes complicity in your own diminishment. And that is that if you accept a low standard, you are almost perpetuating the harvest of that standard. So, right, if you are tolerant to weakness or sloth nature or laziness or anger, envy, arrogance, then you will be sowing those seeds in your life and you will get more of that, right? So it's very simple, whereas the hard part may be to change, to notice I'm playing this role. I am diminishing my own life by the way that I live. And if you can have that conversation with yourself, if you can reflect, if you can look and be aware of your intentions, your motives, you may see that the self serving the God of money may be draining your soul. But at the same time, you want to have financial freedom. So, what are you to do? And that is to bring a twist in your relationship to the action which creates your wealth. You have to start to learn how to love what you do rather than do what you do for an outcome. And if you're living in alignment in righteousness, then you will start to double down on your innate gifts because you are aware of how you feel after doing X, Y, and Z. And your heart, your consciousness, your being, your vibration, your frequency will continuously confirm and affirm what you need to be doing more. And at the same time, your consciousness will show you, for example, regret is a guideline. If you are to have regret in your heart, that is God, that is consciousness, that is Christ, that is Buddha, that is your king showing you, hey, you need to change that because you feel the energy which you have sown. Now, the trouble is that many of us are so fast paced, so distracted, so serving the money god, and so self obsessed that all we do is think and we do not inquire nor reflect. Because if you're so busy thinking about yourself, how could you ever break down the underworkings which create yourself, which create your perception, your identity, and the projections which root from who you see yourself to be? So that is kind of the next level of the integration, the embodiment of truth is you have to be so discerning and diligent and almost obsessed with being aware of the energy that you are creating as every moment passes by. Now, this is not the easiest thing to do, but it is so rewarding. And if it was easy to do, it wouldn't be rewarding. That is part of the yin yang philosophy, where, right? If anyone could just give me if I could purchase a jacked physique, it wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable of a journey, right? And that's why I love fitness so much because it is one of those fields where maybe I'm not helping other people make money necessarily, but at the same time, your physique is a representation of your spirit. Your first impressions matter so much. If you're sharp, strong, confident, free of insecurity, people in business, people in family, the people you walk by that don't even know you, they can see that via your posture, via your movement, via maybe they don't see the aura, but they feel the aura. That's the cool thing about what we are as human beings. We're not human doings nor human havings. We are energy. If you can be aware of the energy which you create via your actions lead into your thoughts. Then your thoughts create that feedback loop and lead back into your actions. So when are you going to break the loop, right? When are you going to ask that question of, how do I feel after doing XYZ? What's my attitude, right? What's my action? What's my thinking? How does that all correlate together? Because if you can unravel the root, then you can understand the truth and you will be a beacon. You will show and shine. Now, others may not be ready for that degree of light, and that is okay. You are to understand that it is their sense of self being uneasy around that degree of truth. So, this is where, on one level, you say, "Be gone, Satan. Leave that." Like this spirit needs to exit. And then on the other end, if that may not be the time nor place, you walk away. Or sometimes you stand up for yourself. Sometimes you walk away. And sometimes you listen. And your heart, your connection, your energy will guide you in the moment, showing you how to show up. Right? In the Bible, they talk about when you are persecuted, you do not need to think about what you need to be saying. God will say what needs to be said through you. That essence is still alive in humanity today. And to think that only certain people are allowed to have it is part of the trap. That's part of the trap. Now, the person who has it is only special when he knows that the thing isn't his. It's not yours. It's not mine. It is the essence of truth, which has created the entire world. And if you can learn how to have a balance of strength and humility simultaneously, then you are scratching the surface of that which is beyond words, right? Why? Why do metaphors and parables hit hard? Well, because it is beyond the words. The message is deeper than the words. If you can learn to read between the lines of your own thinking, then you will be able to understand the deeper nature of what you are. And the only way you can have this extremely sensitive awareness with yourself is by doing the work to observe yourself. You do this work. Let's correlate what we're saying now to why setting boundaries feels like betrayal at first. And it's almost like earlier I touched on how the ego may not be ready, right? The ego is a self-defensive mechanism, meaning it wants to protect the identity. The identity is who we think ourselves to be, but there is something so much more deep and true, which is also within us. So if we live in the ego, then we don't set any boundaries. But if we set boundaries, then you're going to have a form of a backlash, whether it be from the person you're setting the boundary with, or if you're setting a boundary with yourself. That'll come in the form of thought, because the ego and the identity communicates via thought. So if you can observe that almost battle happening as you look to create change in your habits, in your boundaries, in the structure of your lifestyle, you may have a bit of a spiky moment where, see, there's the tough part. I know you've heard this before. It is like what is comfortable is familiar. But a lot of people have a comfortable hell because they've gotten so familiar with living a half-ass life. They've gotten extremely comfortable not being alive. Now, when the fire starts to be spread, the light begins to shine on someone's eyes who have been blind and closed for many years. That sense of self, depending on where the spirit is at, may be ready to surrender to the truth and let the light heal. Or, on the other hand, that identity, the demons may try to absorb the spirit evermore. And it is that sort of discernment where I can't tell you what to do or how to do it, but your heart can. And what I'm talking about is how you can listen to your heart, because that's God within you. And that's the one thing that humanity needs so dearly, is to reclaim or find the truth again, which is within. It is not in books. It is in books, but it's not solely in books. The real book is reading yourself. That's the unwritten book that you have to learn how to decipher. And that's what I aim to speak about. Now, what to do when you realize you've been accepting the unacceptable? This really spans back to the last point of when you have gotten comfortable in hell, right? When you are doing things which are familiar, but when you ask the question, how do I feel after doing this familiar thing? It is empty, it is stale, it is stagnant, it is drained. So the hard part is realizing that you've been accepting something of that nature. You've been accepting stagnation, weakness, conformity, trying to fit in. And when you realize this, what you get to do is to rewrite your story. You get to take out a pen and paper and start to reflect upon your relationship to your lifestyle. You get to notice, what are the things in my life which drain me? When you ask the right questions, you're going to get simple and clear answers which guide you toward easy yet powerful shifts. And when I use the word easy, it may not always feel easy, but it's so much harder to stay as you are than to start to change. And that's kind of why I use that word. It's time to change. It's time for us to grow, to expand, to ask the hard questions, to have the hard conversations, and to bring a new level of integrity and righteousness into the way that we are sowing every moment. So that just means a full accountability and awareness of what you are radiating. Every moment you're throwing rocks into the river, what ripple effects are you creating? What's the butterfly effect that you are emanating? It's up to you to ask those questions and to look within and then to make the changes due to your heart's wisdom. Train your intuition, because I can never give you the exact answers for your path. But all I can promise you is that learning how to listen to your heart, your intuition, and hear the voice of truth, that is all that you need. I can only share this as simply as I possibly can. So I appreciate you very much. I don't think we need to recap 22 minutes. It's a long one today. Thank you so much for listening. Share it with a friend. That would mean the world to me. I got some cool fitness stuff in the works. Basically, long story short, we're going to have a product for everyone. Whether you can afford low ticket, mid ticket, high ticket, we are making the first step of the spiritual journey simple, yet informative and enjoyable to go through. So this is really targeting anyone who has extra body fat. If you have that skinny, fat body as a father, as a man who is successful in other areas, but is lacking that physical discipline, you're who I'm speaking to. Discipline in the Mirror, the Greek God Method. That's the title. It's in the works. If you're excited for that, just shoot me an email. But yeah, share this with a friend. Thank you so much for listening. You know what to do. You have the wisdom within you. Let's activate it. Let's make the changes. Put in the work. Watch what you're creating. Every day, every moment. Have a wonderful day. Let's go.